Good afternoon,
Recording.
and welcome to Material Requirements Planning. This is going to cover the extra cost add-on from MySys SBM that allows you to access MRP scheduling under the planning section of MySys SBM. Just as a reminder, let's try to, we'll hold the questions till the end here, and once we're done looking at the differences between MRP and SAE, the differences between MRP and MySys SBM and SAE, we'll handle all your questions there at the end. Okay, so let's start with, you'll find the access to the scheduling section underneath the planning over here in the left on your menu. Material Requirements Planning. We're going to start with Master Production Schedules. Okay, so from a preparation standpoint, when you're setting up clients or end users to get ready to use the schedule, the same considerations are true. You certainly want to make sure that you have all the stocking thresholds for all of their items for each individual location set up. Similar to SAE, everything in SBM is location specific. The schedule obeys those rules. So the stocking thresholds we're going to focus on for the purposes of determining shortages, when to tell you to buy and build things are going to be driven by the location-specific stocking thresholds that you define for each one of the items. Along with those, you're going to make sure that for the item you have the purchasing lead defined on that stock tab in Master Files Items, and for your assemblies in a basic configuration, you're going to make sure that you have the assembly lead defined for all your assemblies, as well as the lead times on the materials tab. And just to kind of flesh that out as to what I'm talking about, give you a little refresher, there are two leads to be concerned with in the bill of material. Okay, the first one is the assembly lead, which is here, and that's how many days it takes you to build this assembly. Okay, and then there's the material lead for each of your BOM components, okay, which is defined over here, and that's the day in the production process that each one of those items is used in. That's important for the schedule because the schedule is going to determine and drive a use event for each one of these items based on whatever day it's needed in the production process to build, say, this I-41. Okay, so this item's used on the first day of production, second day, third day, okay, and so on. So make sure these are defined. You know, once you get into level 3, then we start talking about the route driving, all that, but that's another session. Okay, so some new, really the new consideration once you get into SBM is this units per lead. Okay, if you have a 0 defined in there, that simply means that we're going to perform exactly the same way it processed in SAE, meaning if you're building 1 or 1,000, okay, it's going to obey the assembly lead. If you put, say, 10 in here, that means you can build 10 every 3 days, okay, of this I-41. So just keep in mind, if they're going to be utilizing the unit per lead, you want to set those up ahead of time, okay? All right, so let's go back into scheduling, Master Production Schedules, and we'll bring up the schedule and take a look at the new schedule. All right. So first thing to note here is you no longer have simply a 3-character schedule ID. You can now define your schedule IDs with up to 6 characters. Description's much the same. Okay, now as you notice here, the key thing that's missing on this Setup tab is the periods. Okay, there's no longer the concept of periods in the SBM schedule. Okay, SBM uses strictly a date-based schedule. All right, so what that means is we're no longer satisfying demand within periods. It's now all driven by the actual date things are needed, as opposed to using the buckets that you would have defined in SAE. The easiest comparison to give you here in this respect would be if you worked with a schedule that you, say, would set up an SAE, and you would define your periods as day-based and make each period 1 day long. You'll find it's very similar to the way the SBM schedule will work now. Everything is based on the date. Okay. Now, with that in mind, okay, a key concept to keep in mind with this is in SAE, when you initialize the schedule, and take that same example, let's say you defined a period based on 1 day in length, okay, and let's say you ran it out for 60 periods. Okay, so you're running a schedule in SAE for 60 days. It creates 60 periods. Since they're a period, we have to create that period, regardless of whether or not any activity is going on in that period. It still has to get created. In SBM, that's not the case. If something's not happening with an item on a given day, we don't create anything for it because there's no activity on that date. It's just a date-based schedule. So whenever activity pops up, we're going to create an event on that date. Okay, but at initialization, if there's nothing going on, no record needs to be created at the database level. As a result, what you're going to find is that the performance upon initialization should be improved over SAE in many cases. Okay? All right, so there are some other differences on this menu. Auto build override, it's still the same, but there's one key note. And this is true, and actually it's my fault. I skipped over it on the when we covered stock control and where you perform your stock transfers. I apologize for that. We now have an always setting under the auto build override, and that's true in stock control as well. So this basically says for this transfer or for this schedule, I want to always auto build. So regardless of checking the stocking thresholds of the assemblies to see if they actually drop below the auto build threshold, always just says regardless. I want you to auto build, explode down throughout all levels of the assemblies so that I can see all the demand at every level. Okay. Shortage basis, same selection, 0 minimum reorder. Okay. But we have an initialization mode now. Okay. Items that have current activity, obviously that's the same. We're looking at released MOs, work orders, open purchase orders. But we also have include items that have current activity or shortages. Okay, so this says I also want you to include not just items that are on MOs and POs, but I also want you to include any items that are currently short based on the shortage basis in the schedule. Okay. All items just says that. Go out and grab every single item at every location and bring it into the schedule. Over here on the right, we have a locations container. Okay, now those of you who remember in SAE, in order for you to pick and choose which locations to include in a schedule, you would either have to plug in one location, check the box that said all locations, but if you wanted to include and exclude specific locations, there was really no way to enter a range, and a range didn't really make a whole lot of sense anyway. But if you wanted to pick and choose which locations, you'd have to actually go into master files, bring up locations, cycle through each one, and select and deselect which ones to exclude from MPS. We actually had a checkbox in there that allowed you to select and deselect which locations to exclude from a master production schedule. In SBM, we've created this little container here that allows you the ability to simply toggle which ones you want to use or have the schedule consider and exclude. Okay, and you just go down through and check which ones you want. The holiday section right here on the setup tab. Okay, just check the boxes that are non-work days for them. Okay, and the schedule considers those as the company's closed down, nobody's building anything, and we use that for the purposes of determining lead times. Okay. All right, include Sage ACPAC ERP. The include sales inventory is the same. For those of you, just a little refresher, if you check that box, we're going to go and grab any linked items at its corresponding location in IC and include whatever quantities over there as the initial stock value. Okay, that's what would be added to your current stock in MISIS. Sales orders means go out and grab any sales orders that are linked to a MISIS item over an order entry. Quotes and estimates. We'll bring in any quotes and estimates over from ACPAC and bring those into the schedule as well. Okay. exclude sales orders, quotes, and estimates before a given date. You can check this box, define a date, and then instead of having us grab every sales order, we'll just grab the orders that have a date prior to whatever you select there. Okay. And then there's create pegged orders. Okay, and this is a big one. Create pegged orders basically says, I want you to create a finish assembly event for every one of the sales orders, order details that you bring into the schedule. Now, those of you who remember in SAE, when we pull sales orders into a schedule, they come into the schedule as transfer to sales events. Okay, and that is true in SBM as well. However, if you have the create pegged order selected, what that will do is create a finish assembly event for every one of the sales order details. Okay, along with that finish assembly event, we're going to flag the sales order that this finish assembly is for. Now, what's that do for us? That makes it so that when you create MRP from that, you're going to be able to create an MO or work order that is specifically pegged to that sales order. Okay, automatically. You'll see it both in the audit, the MRP, and then as in the end with the resulting MO or work order that you create. Okay? Now, another side effect to this is what it also does is it will sum, what it will also do is break down, if you have sales order details that are referencing the same date, okay? So you have two different sales orders, say, for the same item that are being shipped out on the same date. If you don't have this selected, okay, we're going to sum those two sales transfers, okay, and just tell you to create one MO for the full quantity because it takes place on the same day. If you have this selected, that's when we'll break down each one of those details for you on the same date, and along with the bonus of having it linked up to the sales order. Okay, so let's keep that selected for now. And let's just click Initialize. Now, up top here, okay, we're going to discuss some of these buttons a little bit later. However, you'll see Initialize, Purge, Relinquish, Assign. Those buttons are all up top. Okay, so we're going to click Initialize, prompts us to save. We'll run it through. Okay, goes down through, scans the database based on our selections. Let's take a look at the Options tab. Okay, this is comparable to what was the filter in SAE. All right, so a little bit different though. This Options, just like in SAE, allows you to toggle what you're interested in looking at. Okay, controls the display that we're going to see here in a moment. Okay, but it is dynamic and much quicker than what you would have found in the display. For instance, if I bring up the summary real quick, okay, we see some of these are raw materials. If I go to the options here and deselect this, as soon as I click Save, it's done. Just like that, there's no application of the filter settings. I come back to the summary, now my raw materials are gone. Okay, so you can dynamically select these, save your change, and it updates your summary display based on the new selections. All right, so let's get to the Summary tab. I'm going to expand my screen here for you. Okay, so this is the summary display. You could relate this in SAE to when you went into and initially pulled up a master schedule that you had just initialized. Okay, so let's focus on the grid down bottom. Okay, this is very similar to what you'd see on the summary display. Many of the columns are the same. Okay, so I won't go over each one. You got max, quantities, short, what your short date is. The first thing to note here, though, is this drop-down, okay, the sort by. Okay, so sort by allows you 4 selections: item number, first short quantity, first short date, or maximum short quantity. Okay, select those, and it automatically sorts your display based on the selection you make. In here you have a title bar right in the middle that allows you to quickly find the item you're looking for. Right. So you can type that in, click Find Now, jumps right through and finds the item you're looking for. All right, so let's talk about what I'm sure everyone here was already looking at while we were talking about the grid, which is the display up top here, okay, this chart. This is a big change that we've added to SPM. This is a graphical display, basically, of what's going on for the item you're focused on, okay? Gives you an overall view of all the activity that's taking place for an item. Okay? So what we can do here in our summary display, we click on an item, okay, and that focuses this summary display on that item at that location, and it changes. So if I click Loc 2, note the graphical display has now changed. This is true. We're on the same item, different locations, but as you cycle through the different items, you're going to see it change. Okay? You can also click and drag multiples to get an overall view. All right, we'll look more at that in a moment. So let's first talk about the dates here. Now, many of you over the past few seminars have gotten used to the fact that you can click and drag to shift focus. Okay, to shift focus in and out. Right? The same is true there. Okay, and actually, let's run a quick look here at these icons over on the right. Okay, this is the toolbar. So the first one you've got here is going to show the entire schedule in time span. Okay, so if we click that right now, you'll notice it's shifted based on these two lines here. So let's talk about what these mean. Okay, the vertical green line that you'll see here is denoting the beginning of the schedule. Okay, we initialize the schedule based on today's date, so March 2nd. That's the green one. The vertical red line is the end date. That's June 2nd. Okay, that's when we initialized our from date from. Okay, this red horizontal line represents the current shortage basis of the schedule. Okay? You'll see this green line here, okay, that's representing the activity we've got going on for this item, okay, at this location, because we're focused on that one right now. Okay? This will change colors based on where the stock level's at in the schedule. So if it drops down in here, you're going to see it go red. Okay? If it stays, it actually has a gray color in here, but if it stays gray, it's just nominal. All right? Now what we're going to see here in a moment, as we get more scheduling events that take place in here, these can actually create shading in the display that will create a yellow-ish shade. That indicates that there's a stock level being driven on this display as a result of scheduled activity. Okay, so can change colors. Don't worry about it. If you don't remember exactly what I'm saying here, you can hit F1. The help covers all these different lines in multiple places, and it'll tell you exactly what each one of those denotes. Okay. All right. So let's go to the zoom time span here. Okay? This forces the display to include all the events that could possibly take place or are taking place for this item at this point in time. So if we had stuff that's going on before the start of the schedule, those are going to show up. Okay, so if we had some outstanding MOs that were building this item, outstanding purchase orders, maybe some that extended beyond, it's going to shrink the display up so that it includes everything so that you can see it. Okay, so again, this goes back to start and end date driving the display. This includes all the details. Okay? You can click the zoom vertical to shift and focus in on the bar you're looking at. Okay? So right now, I was looking at the quantity display. Now we're looking at sample data, so we have one line showing up here. We're focused on one item. Okay? As we're going to see in a moment, you can actually focus in on a bunch of different details, okay, which makes this display have quite a few different lines. You want to focus in on them. You can click in and focus up, okay, and then you can bring it back down. We'll get to that one in a moment, okay, and then you can reset it. You can also double-click on a given date in this summary display to drive a scheduling event. So you want to schedule an event to satisfy a shortage, double-click on the date. It brings up the schedule event, default to your event type, and you plug a quantity in and schedule that, and it automatically updates the display. Okay. Then there's the ShowHide Events. Okay, ShowHide Events actually brings up what you've got going on for this item that's potentially causing these quantity shifts. Okay, so for instance, I can cursor over this top guy up here, finish assembly, okay, receiving 100 on work order 2 at Loc 1. It's going to result in a stock quantity of 125. I've got what looks like to you probably a green line here, but these are actually activity that's going on. Okay, transfer to sales. I've got a sales order out there for 150. Okay, I've got a couple of these now, right? I start scrolling down. There's an MO. Okay, that's building. Okay, so I want to focus in a little closer. I stretch the dates out. All right, so on April 12th. We've got some stuff going on. Okay, now I want to zoom it back. All right, so you can play around with this. It's an extremely useful tool that's going to help you isolate visually what you've got going on without having to use the grid. Okay, and we'll come back and revisit this from time to time as we go through. Okay. All right, so let's talk about these buttons down bottom here. Okay. On the bottom of the summary display, okay, you've also got 4 buttons. Resolve shortage, and actually let's clear our display up here so that we're showing everything. All right. You've got resolve shortage, resolve all shortages. These are similar to auto schedule JIT. They will go through, and resolve shortage would go through and resolve shortages for just the item that you're focused on. Okay? So it will create a receive event for that item in time to satisfy a shortage of any non-assembled type item. Okay? It's going to create a finish assembly event to simulate building via a finish assembly event, whatever parent item or assembled type item is short. Resolve all shortages goes through every item, not just the one you're focused on, goes through every item in the schedule, creating receive events and finish assembly events to satisfy shortages of the schedule, just like AutoJIT. All right. Promise date. Available to promise. Let's say you were interested in, all right, based on my current stock quantities, current manufacturing orders, sales orders, whatever I've got out there in the system, I want to know what's the earliest date I could have 10,000 of this item right now. I click check, plug my location in, the quantity in. The schedule is going to go out and look at everything you've got going on for that item. It's going to look at MOs. It's going to look at purchase orders. It's going to consider components that are used to build this I-56. See if the quantities you'd need to have 10,000 of these built are available. If they are, great. If they aren't, it's going to consider for raw materials the actual purchasing lead time that it would take you to order what you needed so that you could build 10,000 I-56s. In the case of an assembly, it's going to figure its assembly lead to determine how many days it'll take you to build it, and then its components beneath it so that you bought those if you needed them. Okay, and in the end, we put a kind of a large quantity in here. What we're going to get is a date telling us the earliest available date I could have 10,000 I-56s in stock at this location. All right, so let's just give it a moment here to plug in. Okay, and this is all driven by quantity. Okay, so as I type in 10,000, obviously I'm consuming a lot more of the materials at the top level. Potentially the sub-assemblies are getting consumed, and then they're not going to have anything available, so that this available to promise function has to consider building them and then check their components underneath them to see if they have anything available, and if not, calculate order lead to determine how long it's going to take me to bring those in to come up with it. Whereas, if I were to build, say, 10, it's going to be much quicker. So right now, earliest availability for me to build 10,000 of this item and have them in stock would be April 23rd. So I might say, yep, I can have 10,000 of those for you on April 23rd. Maybe I give myself a couple of days, April 25th. Right? Whereas if I say, all right, let's just go with 10. What's my availability date if I want 10? Well, you could have 10 of those in stock today because you've got them in stock right now. Go get them. Okay? We change it around. We put in 100. Check the 100 through. That'll take me a few days, right? I've got to build some. So you can use this, plug in the quantity you want, and then let's say you want to make this happen. You want to drive an MRP from your available to promise calculation. You click on schedule, and it schedules an event to build this quantity. You'll see a finished assembly event. So let's do that. Let's click schedule. Okay. We'll take a look at our I-56. All right. We'll jump to the Details tab, and then jump to the Audit. Okay. So down on the Audit, 3.5, there's a use of 100. I'm going to need to use 100 of those. Okay. As a result, I had 15 in stock. I'm going to be left with the need to build 85. Okay, so I create MRP around this, resolve shortage to generate a finished assembly event, however you want to do it. You're going to be told to generate an MO for the quantity you need that you won't have in stock. Okay, so let's talk about the Details tab. Okay, that's available to promise. All right, so what you'll find, well, actually, before I get ahead of myself, schedule event, this is the button you would use to schedule activity, to resolve shortage. If you want to plug some planning in directly, use schedule event. Schedule your event by clicking on it. Okay, brings up the item you're on. You can dynamically change if you need to. Click the drop down, select the event type. This is much the same as it was. Revision, loc, and quantity. Okay, and that schedules an event in there to satisfy that demand or to simulate that activity. Okay, so the Details tab. This is similar to the Detail view in SAE, but it looks a little bit different. Okay, you have the ability to drive and focus in on what you're looking for on each tab. So, for instance, if I select just I-56, Loc 1, just this one, and I want to see what's driving that, I now click on the Audit, and it's very focused. It says that's your initial stock quantity. You have 15. Okay, so just to make sure you were clear, I-56, net change 15, available 15, where's that coming from? I'm not sure. I click on Audit with just that row highlighted. It shows me that audit for just that detail. If I want to see everything, I'll just click and drag down through. Note the display gets updated as I highlight rows. Okay, so now I'm on the detail section now. I have net change, available stock, scheduled receipts and bills. We're all familiar with those from SAE. But what this does with the graphical display, it's getting detailed with me. Now it's telling me specifically, right, what I've got going on here, the quantities associated with each one of these events. Okay, so as you cursor over it, it's telling you what's going on with this item. You haven't even gone to the Audit tab yet. Okay, but with all these highlighted, let's click on Audit. Okay, we get our grid. Okay, we're going to click down through. This is what gives us the detail. Okay, many of you, you know, I've talked to you in the past. We've all talked about get the scheduling audit. Let's look at it. Let's trace things back from the beginning, and we'll figure out why something's doing what it's doing, you know, why we're telling you to buy or build what we're telling you to buy or build. That's still here. All these columns are still here. All right, you still get all that detail. Now you get a display to go along with it, okay, so that you can cursor over things. Okay. Now, there's one other feature here I want to talk about up top. I skipped over the refresh button. In SAE, okay, let's say you've done some planning in your schedule. You've done some work. You've gone through, maybe you've put a forecast in. Maybe you've scheduled some events, done an auto-schedule JIT, what have you. That may take a full day, may take a couple days, who knows how long it takes. But when you're done, you want to actually go out and consider. You want to grab any of those new purchase orders, new manufacturing orders, okay, that have been put into MySys for real and opened and released over the past few days that you've been working on the schedule. Because we all know it doesn't know about anything after you click Initialize. And the same is true in SBM. You click Initialize, we're not aware of any purchase orders and manufacturing orders, work orders, that were created, opened, and released after initialization. Okay? So, in SAE, you know, we'd get calls about this regarding pulling in that new activity. So what was the process? Right? You'd have to save your events to a batch. You'd then have to purge the schedule, reinitialize the schedule, and then post the batch. Okay? Then you've got a new schedule. It grabbed all the new current activity. You posted your batch, so you put all your events back into the schedule, and now you're good to go. Okay? Well, now you can click Refresh in SBM. Clicking Refresh goes out, basically reinitializes the schedule, but it maintains all of your scheduled activity in the schedule and just grabs the new stuff that's out there. So it goes and gets any new open POs, any new released work orders and manufacturing orders, but keeps all of this stuff, all the work you did in the schedule. Okay, so refresh is the way to go in SBM. Okay, so you could be working on a schedule in SBM all day. End of the day, you're like, oh, I bet they've released some MOs. I bet they've opened some purchase orders. I'm going to go and click refresh because I want to bring those in before I create MRP. Right? You go ahead, click refresh, and it goes and gets those. Okay, process MRP. So up top here, create MRP. Okay, we'll skip purchase orders for now. You get a prompt that comes up. Do you want to create your purchase orders right now? Click yes. It'll bring up the MRP for you. You don't have to go get it. Okay? So we'll look at production orders first. So we'll say, yeah, we want to create some production orders. Okay? Because remember now, SBM, you can create work orders, manufacturing orders, or both. Okay? We looked at that back when we touched on MRP, looking through stock check and buyer's advice. Okay? All right, so the first thing to note here is the levels. Remember, in SAE, we had a couple different levels. You know, you could go down to the detail, you double-click on one, and it would drive you down to the detail. SBM, okay, shows you the summary view right up top here. So here's what you need. Okay, scheduled quantity is based on scheduled events. Short quantity is based on what's short. Okay. you can click on a detail, okay, and again, this is total. This is the sum of these. Your detail is down below. So if I say, all right, well, this is great. I want to build one MO or one work order or both for the full quantity I need at the earliest date, I click on Build Item. Okay? Build Item grabs the full quantity I need, and again, this is scheduled quantity. Okay? And it's going to tell me to create an order, and I go in and create an order. Or I simply click on a detail. If I want to create MOs or work orders for each individual detail, I select the one I want and click Build Detail. That's going to tell me to create an MO work order or both for just the required quantity of that detail. I don't have to drill down in, grab the detail, and then start. All from that form, I grab the one I want. You'll see all these options in here that you remember from SAE. You can, if you have a work order that's inactive, you could add quantities to it. Okay? Those are all still available. For this case, let's look at the new order, though. Okay? New order. Okay? One key thing to note here is this: don't release work orders or MOs. If you don't want to release it right away, okay, don't just check this checkbox. That will create the work order, MO, or both. Okay, but it'll leave it inactive. You release it on your own, or you come back here and use the release work order or MO button. Okay. The other thing to note, you have 3 different options. You can use a build mode of work order, manufacturing order, or both. If you choose both, and we all looked at the linking before, if you choose both, what will happen is it will create an MO and a work order, okay, based on these seeds. It'll link them up for you, okay, building this quantity of this item, and since we pegged it to a sales order, it's going to link to sales order. Okay, and that's right here. So we click Create. Okay, it's created it. Let's go and look at it. Go under Production. Well, we got to close up some of these forms here real quick. Production, work orders. Okay, this one's it. Okay, there's our sales order. Here's the detail link to our manufacturing order. Okay, there's our 300. Okay, and it's got the right start dates. So I can go through, and right now if I want to build it, I'd click that action, complete it, put the 300. It automatically updates the manufacturing order with those completed quantities, all with that one process. Okay, all with that one process. So let's go back in and take a look at purchasing requirements. Okay, so once again, we'll just revisit that real quick, just to revisit those changes. Okay, if you want to build the full quantity, you click on this. It builds the full quantity by selecting Build Item. It'll build that 720, and plus I think I got some short in there too, yeah, plus the shortage. Okay, so it builds that full quantity I need on one order. If I want to build for a specific detail, select the detail I want. Now, obviously, if we're pegging orders and we've got that sales order in here, we're doing details, right? Because if you build summary, we have no way to know which sales order. So clearly you would be choosing these in our scenario because we've pegged the orders. Okay, so we select a detail. Build detail is what allows you to do that. Okay, we also have a build all. Okay, and delete requirement. That's all there in SAE as well. Okay, but the build all, similar to SAE, we allow you to deselect or select just sub-assemblies or final assemblies. We determine what a final assembly is if it's not used in a higher level assembly. Okay, so if you had a whole list of components, we see this from time to time. You create MRP. It's got sub-assemblies as well as final assemblies. But you're like, hey, I'm using auto build. I don't want to necessarily create MOs and work orders for my subs because I auto build all the time, right? You might deselect this. And then when you build all, it's just going to build and create MOs for just your parent items. Okay, or you include both. All right, you have the same selection. You can link them up, choose both. You can go work order or just manufacturing orders. Again, same as SAE, you can build in multiples you reorder, or you can just do what the schedule is telling you you need. And then you're going to tell us how to group the work orders by. Okay, remember, this is a big change from SAE. Work orders can now detail out multiple assemblies that are being built. Okay, how do you want us to group them? If you want us to group them by item number, select item number. Okay, and that we'll group them by item number. Okay, so you'd see the same item number on one work order, the same item number on work order number 2, and so on. Okay. Let's build all. Okay, so let's touch on the purchasing MRP here real quick. Okay, again, this is much the same as SAE. Looks and feels a little bit different. Okay. Again, the include assembled items with suppliers. We're used to seeing that. Show all requirements. Okay. So select the detail. These are all pretty obvious. Much the same as the production. Select the detail. By item will buy the full quantity you need, or you select individual details and go with the by detail. Okay, gives you the supplier, new PO. If we had existing POs, we could add details to it. That's all there. Don't lose anything here. Up in here, you're defining the parameters for the PO that's about to be created. If it all looks good, you simply click Create PO. Okay. One thing you can do is change the supplier product code should you need to. Don't release purchase order. If you'd rather keep the PO inactive, keep it inactive. Select this checkbox. Okay, we no longer force it open if you don't want to. We give you that option. Okay. Just keep in mind, if you reinitialize and the PO isn't open, it's not current activity. Current activity is open purchase orders and released MOs and work orders, okay, as well as direct allocates. Okay, so let's also touch on reports here real quick. Stay on schedule. So under reports, planning, scheduling reports, all right here. Scheduling audit, cash commitment summary. We remember these from SAE. The different flavors of the purchasing advice and production advice are included as options with the one report entry. So when I select on purchasing advice, now you don't have purchasing advice with qualified suppliers and the standard purchasing advice. It's all right here. You print it how you want it. Okay, so you bring up your schedule, give the dates you're interested in. Do you want to see existing purchase orders or not? Do you want supplier information or not? How do you want it to sort? Okay, include assemblies or not. Right, and you preview it out. There's no longer the need to search through individual reports. Use the description to try and derive what that report's going to show you. You simply select the parameters you want, all from the one UI, and you get a resulting report based on what you chose. Purchasing advice. Okay, production advice is much the same. And you're all set. Okay, and that is a material requirements planning, MRP, SBM style.
Okay, Doug, it's Dave Brown here. Thanks very much.
Sure.
There are a few other things that people can explore on their own, aren't there? But we do have some questions. Isn't that amazing?
Oh. Okay.
Are you ready?
I am.
From Tom Blazing. Since there are no periods, how do you specify certain dates as holidays that don't fall on a weekend, for example?
Well, the holiday
section. Take them down to, that's where I thought you'd take them. I think it's down in setup, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The holiday section is down here. And that's your holiday section. Okay, you define your holidays in here. Okay, so those are for things like Christmas, Easter, whatever holidays they would be closed. So you define those in there.
Okay. Tom also asked, how do you tell in the graphical view what the shortage basis is? What's that red line that you showed us?
That's the red line, yep. So when you look in the schedule, let me just bring that up here again. On the Summary tab, bring up the items you're interested in. So we'll go here. This guy here is the shortage basis of the schedule. So in our case, we initialize the schedule based on 0 as the shortage basis. So this would reflect 0 in stock. What you'll note here is this line is dynamic. It's going to change in color, okay, based on the date as quantities are going over and under the shortage basis. Okay, these things in yellow, or this section in yellow, indicates that we have scheduled activity, okay, that's driving that shift in quantity. Okay, but again,
now, Doug, if I forget what that red dotted line means, where do I find that?
You would hit F1. You can even hit it from this form, and it discusses it, and it's actually in multiple.
No.
Parts.
There are various options for what that red line is, right? How do I know what selection I have made for it? It's over on the Setup tab.
Oh, you're talking about how do you know what you set your shortage basis to?
That's right.
I'm sorry.
It's right there.
It's right on your
I know. You have to remember the old geezers in the group are very forgetful.
I see, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all at a button click. There's no more, jumping out of master schedule, going into scheduling setup to see what you would define there, or jump into the details tab. I think we also specify it in SAE. It's all right here with just a button click. So.
Okay. Dana Stinson asked, does available to promise take into account items that are on sales order?
If you included the sales orders, it would, yes. But what it's looking at specifically is effects on inventory. So obviously, if it's out there and you didn't bring it in, no. But what it's looking at is the current stock quantity, and it's all based on today, and what effects on inventory, MOs, POs, things like that. So.
Okay. Sonia says, I'm still a little fuzzy on the difference between work orders and MOs. I know you covered this last session, but why would you create both?
Okay, well, at its base, there isn't a need to, okay? However, the work order allows you to group assemblies that you're going to build as opposed to the MO, which builds one specific item. Okay, so for instance, let me just bring up a work order here. Okay, you can add details to a work order that are all building a specific assembly. Okay, an MO is only building one specific item. Okay, so you can use the work order to group any number of assemblies for whatever reason that you would want to process at any given time. We could get all kinds of examples, but in particular, let's say you wanted to, I have to put a date in here, but let's say you wanted to group assemblies based on, say, a specific project you've got going on, and you have a subset of manufacturing orders that are all driving towards that one project. You could create an MO that grouped all the M-series manufacturing orders on one work order, and then instead of visiting each MO as you need to build it, you could come to work order M-series and then process that work order for whatever MO needs to be built. So, for instance, if this guy was referencing a manufacturing order, I click on Complete 10. I could build this I-56, update the manufacturing order to show a completed quantity of 10 at the same time, all from this one MO. If I happen to know that they built every single manufacturing order on this work order, I could go down through and set a complete action on the work order for every one of the details on here, all at the same time, and then click Process. So, for instance, I know these aren't referencing an MO here, but okay, let's say I want to complete all of these, and I could have 50 details on it. It doesn't matter. You come in and click Process. Okay, it's going to go through and build each one of those quantities of those details. When they're referencing a manufacturing order, the system actually goes to the MO, does a complete for those assemblies. Now, here's the kicker, though. MOs, as you know, actually allow you to customize the details. So if you had manufacturing orders in your system, building those assemblies that had custom materials on them, you process them all from this manufacturing order, and it updates the MOs for you on the fly, okay, as you process them.
Okay, now I consolidated a number of questions here related to batches because you really didn't cover much about batches. Do you want to give us
yes,
a nickel tour of scheduling batches, Doug?
Sure. So scheduling batches are pretty much the same. What you get here, okay, we have a forecast button, much the same as we have a forecast in SAE. Okay, your selections are basically the same. This will bring in any invoices that have already been processed over in ACPAC. Okay, so this is still there. Give it the date range, the locations you want to bring in. Okay, select your manufacturing criteria down here. A couple of advantages. You have the set filter criteria, which allows you to use an item filter. You can bring in for all items, just mapped locations or specific ones, and your adjustment quantities. But you click Retrieve. Brings all these into your batch based on transfer to sales events. You would then post these to your schedule, and it would then, as it does in SAE, reflect a decrement in inventory, and then that, in theory, would drive demand. You can also adjust your selections via this Adjust Selected. Okay, again, this is all similar to SAE, but it is all still here. Scale the quantities. So if I wanted to add, say, 10 to my quantities, click OK. Okay, and it goes down through and updates the quantities, adding 10 for whatever I've selected. You can print your batch here, and then it can be posted. Anything in particular about batches they were interested in?
Okay, well, I think that was it, unless I see another question up here. Does it? I guess it's not really that much different from MISIS SAE, is it?
Yeah, I apologize for not visiting this. A lot of this is the same. The look and feel is a little bit different. Some of these fields up here are located at the bottom. Much of it's the same, but you don't lose any functionality. So if you enjoy using this for forecasting, absolutely it's still here. You can still pull in the invoices on this function, and you can manually create them as well. Your ability to add lines and select your event types here. You can do that on the batch and then post it to the schedule, and it updates the schedule accordingly. So.
Yep. Okay, thanks, Doug.
Yep.
Let's see, any other questions about MRP or master production scheduling? This would be a good time to get them in. Well, seeing none, Doug, I think we're going to let you go. And I will point out that the website, there's a couple. All I have to do is say it, but that's okay. We'll get back to it. The website on the documents page had a couple of broken links, and the elves fixed those last night. So those should work. You can print out the accounting details. There are a couple of PDFs that are interesting. All the details of the accounting with ACPAC are there, and some other stuff. Let's see. Here's a question from Mary. Does MISIS have similar import facilities to SAE as, for example, importing a batch?
Sure. Yep, that's all there. What you would do, let me just jump back into a batch here. Probably the best way, take an export to start with. Again, the export is a little bit different than SAE. In particular, if you wanted to just export details, for instance, just deselect, we allow you to just import details. So you can just control these checkboxes. But all of this is controlled by checks. These are the fields that come out. Start with an export. That gives you the format we're looking for. But what you're going to find on the import side of things, and this is true throughout, it's a lot different. We got a moment here. We'll just walk through one. All right. We won't get into what it looks like on the outside, but okay. So you export it in. So what I'll do here, just delete my batch. Okay. File. Import scheduling.
You're brave.
I am brave. Okay, we'll insert it. Okay, so this is what the import looks like. Again, a lot different than SAE. But what you would do, you select this. These are your header fields. Okay, this allows you to map the contents of that field. Bring the Finder up. You can map them around as you need to. Scheduling batch detail. This gives you the detail. In our case, we know what's coming in. But let's say I pulled some fields out. What you'd find is these would be flagged in maroon. So let's say I did an export and I only had item, quantity, and location. I didn't have transaction date, destination. I didn't have all these other fields. They would be flagged as unresolved. What you have to do beforehand is highlight it and then click the Set to Default button, and that will just set it to whatever our default value is for the field you're importing, and that'll bring it in. But you play around with it. I'm sure you guys will be able to feel your way through it. It's pretty straightforward. Click OK, and then it brings a batch in, and you're good to go. But like I said, that'll give you a good starting point to get the format, and that's true of pretty much everything you could import and export in SAE. I can't really think of anything that was taken away in that regard. So you should find all that.
Okay. Thank you. Tom Blazek has a question about multiple items in available to promise. Any way to do that, Doug?
Well, you have to run that one at a time, but yeah. You can do it all from that form. So from here, you would click promise date. There's no need to go cycle through and select the item you want. You can just type it in or use the Finder and then enter that quantity in, schedule the event or get your estimate, and then move on to the next item. So while you can only get one, it's pretty painless to cycle through, but there's no kind of batch for it or anything like that. So.
Okay, and I think what Tom is pressing for is this get into capacity planning. What if you have 3 different items, and what's the interaction, among them? And we really don't pretend to do that, do we?
No capacity planning.
Okay, so it works on just one item at a time.
That's correct. Okay,
anybody else got a question? Okay. Let me remind you that every Wednesday afternoon at, I think it's 2 o'clock Eastern time, we have a user group meeting. You're certainly welcome to join it. You can either come and just lurk in the background or actively participate. The way you get the link to it is simply log into MySysSPM using the sample company. Will get you there, and there's a link at the bottom of the screen. Just use that. That will take you to the meeting Wednesday afternoons at 2 Eastern. Okay, anything to add to that, Doug?
No, I think that's about it.
Okay, well then, if there are no more questions, thanks very much, everybody. And we will see you for the next workshop. Remember that you can register online right now. Also, all the previous sessions have already been posted, recordings of, and this recording will be posted in the next 24 hours. Thanks very much. See you next time. Bye.
Take care.